Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
First today, could a lack of choice when it comes to contraception for women lead to a rise in unplanned pregnancies and abortions? This programme's learned that many GPs in England have stopped providing some forms of contraception because of funding cuts. Clinicians are warning it could mean more unplanned pregnancies and terminations. Jean Mackenzie has this exclusive report, which does contain some frank details.
I experienced weight gain. I experienced complete loss of libido. I had thrush.
I just felt like I wasn't me. I felt a little bit off of my centre.
Sex is supposed to be pleasurable, it's supposed to be something we enjoy, and yet to get contraception is so hard. It's like this barrier to enjoyment.
So these are your pills. We've got male condoms, and then this is a diaphragm. We've also got the contraceptive injection, and then also this is called a Nuva ring. So this is a very flexible plastic ring that fits in the vagina.
From condoms to coils, there are now 15 different types of contraception. But no contraception is perfect and works for everyone. Every woman's experience is different. What's important is choice. But how much is that choice being eroded?
Clinics are having to close down, they're having to restrict their hours.
Difficulty getting into GPs, difficulty getting into contraception clinics.
We are constrained with time, with money.
I really do think we're going to see an increase in abortions and women having unwanted pregnancies.
We've seen evidence that contraceptive services are being cut and heard how women's choice is being taken away.
I'd say my experience with contraception has very much been a roller coaster, but mainly at the bottom. It feels as though it's messed my body around and my hormones and my emotions. The worst contraception that I had was the Mirena coil. Just had no libido. It plummeted. I've tried 2 different progesterone-only pills. One led to really heavy bleeding all the time. The other one led to really irregular bleeding, but also really affected my mood. Suddenly, I was crying in the shower every morning, and I felt like I was going to burst into tears at any moment, and I was so low. So after a few months, I came off that, and straight away I was fine again. I've now made the decision not to be on any kind of contraception. It means I'm really relieved every month when I get my period. It's a risk and it makes me quite nervous, but I'm not willing to go back and go through those side effects again.
Most contraception in England is paid for out of councils' public health budgets, which last year the government cut by £800 million over 6 years. Now research by a group of leading sexual health experts has uncovered cuts to local contraceptive services. They say making it harder to get contraception will mean more unwanted pregnancies and more abortions. Tracy works with women seeking abortions. You speak to women every day whose contraception's failed them. What are they saying to you?
Women tell me every day that their choice is being taken away, and they tell me about the difficulties in accessing services, difficulty getting into GPs. They're not allowed to have the same pill that they've had. Some women have been on the contraceptive patch and then they're told that their GPs don't do that anymore. Some women have been on the Nuva ring and they're told that they don't do that anymore either. And also finding that contraceptive clinics have shut down.
Most women get their contraception from their GP. And in recent years, there's been a real drive to get GPs to offer women a range of options, particularly what's called long-acting contraception. So that's things like the coil and the implant. But now in some surgeries, those options are being taken away. A third of councils are in the process of making these cuts to long-acting contraception. Dr. Sharif's practice has already stopped offering some of these methods.
As a female doctor, I do feel terribly embarrassed that I can't offer my patients a local service, in my practice. My concern is for my patients, and I do feel that, I feel bad when I have to say to them, I'm sorry, if you want the implant, you'd have to go elsewhere. Recently, I had a woman who came in. She said, right, I'm ready. She wanted the coil. We had a discussion about it. Unfortunately, we couldn't arrange that for her here. So I said, okay, you need to go to the family planning centre. And I found out there was like a 6-week wait. And, we just laughed. And I said, you'll probably get pregnant before you get your next coil at this rate. It is quite shocking.
How much pressure are GPs under to prescribe women contraception based on how much they cost?
Right. I'd like to say that we would always give a woman what she wants, but drug costs are an issue, and they are at the back of most GPs' mind when they're doing prescriptions. If someone was, for example, talking about the NuvaRing, you are thinking, okay, that's about £30 for 3 months, compared to an ordinary pill which is about £1.80 for 3 months.
We've seen a survey of more than 1,000 GPs. Only 2% said they offered all 15 methods of contraception, and more than half said there isn't enough time in an appointment to give a woman all the information she needs. And what impact does it have on women if they're not given the contraception that they want?
You're less likely to get a woman coming back for repeat prescriptions. That pill that's giving her maybe side effects that she couldn't come back to you and talk about because she felt that was her only option. That's a challenge. And so then you find women coming in, they're pregnant, and you're saying, oh, but you were given the pill. Contraception is only as good as you use it. And if that woman isn't comfortable with the choice that you've made for her rather than what she wanted, then that really is a failure towards those patients.
I went on the pill when I was about 18 or 19, and I found it uncomfortable, to say the least. I just found that I didn't feel myself. After experiencing those side effects, I decided that I didn't want to take hormonal contraception. My first stop was the diaphragm. I had looked into every single option, and I decided that I didn't want the implant, I didn't want the injection, I didn't want the coil. The nurse's reaction wasn't positive. Her reaction was really terrible. She told me that I was going to get pregnant. She told me that it was not effective. She said because I'm young, I'm super fertile and extra fertile, and she basically laughed me out the room. And she reluctantly fit me. But because of her reaction, when I was having trouble with it or when I wasn't quite sure, I didn't want to go back, and I didn't go back. So I just eventually stopped. I just gave up on it. I basically got pregnant, and although it was unplanned, it was definitely unplanned and definitely a shock, and I was in education, I was at uni, and it was tough. As much as I don't want to say that it's the system's fault that I got pregnant, there is blame there. There's definitely blame there. I felt like I had made an informed choice based on all the information I had available to me. And when I walked into that clinic, I felt that I wasn't supported in that choice. And that eventually led to my contraception failing me.
As well as GPs, women can also go to sexual health clinics for their contraception. But a quarter of councils have closed clinics or are looking at cutting them back.
I'm really lucky here because our access hasn't been restricted. In other areas, clinics are having to close down, they're having to restrict their hours, they're losing staff. Certainly outside London, women may have to travel enormous distances in order to access sexual health settings, which may only be open a couple of days a week.
What are you seeing happen to sexual health clinics?
In the clinic here, we're actually seeing a big increase in the number of women seeking the more specialist long-acting methods of contraception because they're having difficulty accessing that elsewhere. So these are the methods which would probably, the pills and emergency contraception are probably the things that most women would access from their GPs. Then on the other hand, we've got what we call our long-acting reversible methods, the coils, the implant and the injection. And it's these methods that we're seeing in some areas being restricted because they're perceived to be expensive and GPs might not actually be able to prescribe them. These methods here, the patch and the ring, also very good and easy to prescribe from general practice, but we're seeing the funding for those being limited because they're thought to be quite expensive methods, which actually really leaves us with quite a limited choice, which many women might find are the only methods they're able to get hold of.
What happens when you restrict women's choice? You take away options from them?
While all these new methods of contraception have been developed, which have been so much more reliable and given women so much more reproductive control, if we remove those choices again, it's an enormous step backwards. And those great steps forward that we've made to help women plan pregnancy at a time that's convenient for them, all that work will be undone. And I really worry that if the cuts carry on at the rate that we're seeing now, we will see another escalation in teenage pregnancy, unplanned pregnancy and abortion rates.
I know what it's like to not be able to get the contraception you need, because I went through that after the birth of my first child. I went for my 6 to 8 week checkup with a GP and discovered at that point, right at the end of the appointment, that he didn't provide contraception at all. And was just kind of given a leaflet and shoved out the door. I was left feeling kind of quite stranded and quite alone and quite angry. My next option was to go to a sexual health clinic, but I didn't actually get the chance to do that until 5 months after the birth of my daughter. Actually trying to find a clinic that worked for me was really difficult. I had a C-section with my first child, and so obviously I wasn't able to lift anything heavier than the baby. So I had to envisage a situation in which I could get somewhere without having to lift the buggy. I had to fit with the opening hours, and also it was drop-in. So it was not knowing how long I was going to be there in a waiting room with a young baby. So to go without contraception for that period just meant that it was more difficult in terms of me and my partner having the intimacy that we fleetingly got the chance to have with a 5-month-old baby. Well, you take risks, I think, when choice is taken away from you, and that's, you don't like to say that because you're trying to be conscientious about your sexual health. But you know, I know that I've had sex and I've not had protected sex, and I could have got pregnant, and that shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be that hard to get the pill.
A third of women who need contraception live in an area now where services are restricted in some way.
Most women try very hard to avoid a pregnancy. They'll use condoms or they use the pill, but there's nothing they can do about a 6-week wait to try and get the implant fitted or a coil fitted. And they feel quite helpless about it.
How concerned are you about the direction this is going in?
I'm really concerned. We've spent years doing really good work, contraception, sexual health, all that, but now with all the cuts, what we're looking at now is an increase in unwanted pregnancies.
If someone's made an informed decision that actually out of all of these options, I want to choose this, it's, I believe, the duty of the healthcare professional in that situation to support them in that choice, give them as much information as they can to get on with that. And when that isn't happening, that's a failure.
Jean McKenzie reporting. We did, of course, ask the Department of Health to talk to us today. They said no. They did tell us that they believe local areas are best placed to decide how to provide these sexual health services their communities need. Next, condoms, the combined pill, the progesterone pill, implant, injection, hormonal coil, copper coil, diaphragm, cap, female condoms, the patch, vaginal ring, female sterilisation, male sterilisation, fertility awareness. These are the 15 types of contraception that all GPs should provide. Well, this programme's learned that some GPs have stopped providing all forms because of funding cuts, and clinicians are warning it could lead to a rise in abortions and unplanned pregnancies. Let's talk to various people about this, because a survey of GPs for the Family Planning Association suggests that only 2% offer the full range of contraceptive methods, 53% don't have enough time to give women all the information they need, and 23% don't offer the contraceptive implant. GP Anne Connolly is here. Anne Connolly is a member of the advisory group on contraception. Laura Russell is from the Family Planning Association, and Shelley Rain is a nurse specialising in contraception and who now trains nurses in the field. Morning, all of you. Why does this matter?
Well, we've seen fantastic reductions in teen pregnancy over the last 10 years. And one of the major points about that, one of the major factors in that has been improved education to primary care, to the contraceptive services, a lot of extra training, but particularly a focus on the much more reliable, much more cost-efficient, long-acting reversible methods.
What's a long-acting reversible method?
So the long-acting reversible methods are anything that a user doesn't have to take every day or to use during the actual act of sex.
So the implant, for example.
So the implants, the coils, the injection, what we call the fit and forget methods. So once they're there, they're not going to fail.
But it is rare for a woman not to be able to get hold of contraception, full stop, isn't it, Laura?
But it is becoming more difficult, and fundamentally it's about choice for women. When women are able to choose which contraceptive they use, they're more likely to use it consistently and correctly. And our survey shows that they're not getting a full range from their GP.
And do you need a choice of 15? You need that 15, do you, on offer?
Well, that's the thing. As we heard in your film earlier, some methods work more effectively for different women, and if you don't have a choice available there, then you may not find the one that is actually right for you. And when you consider that women spend around 30 years either planning or preventing a pregnancy throughout their lifetime, it's quite a fundamental aspect of healthcare, and choice is really important.
Shelley, you're a nurse specialising in this area. What problems are you seeing potentially because of cuts?
We're getting more pressure on the clinics and nurses in particular, as we're finding that women are coming to us. There's reduced access to appointments, reduced choice, as we've heard. Nurses are under increasing pressure to take on a lot of the workload as staff are leaving. They're having to see more patients in less time. And we're worried, we're frustrated that we can't give the kind of service that we would like and should be able to give to women. And if women's choice is reduced, then, as we've heard, this is going to have a really long-term effect.
In what respect?
Well, I mean, your film showed earlier that people are concerned about possible increases in unplanned pregnancies. If women have a less effective method, then if they have problems with a method and they can't get access to a clinician for help or support to either carry on with the same method or change to another method, then, you know, people are going to take risks. And that's the reality of the situation, and we don't want that to happen.
No, I mean, we've had some viewers saying, you know, women cannot hold partly responsible GPs for an unplanned pregnancy. I mean, that is just ridiculous. Would you accept that, Anne Connolly?
I think that we as GPs need to be able to advise women on all their methods and support them with their choices.
But in the end, it is down to the individual to protect themselves.
It is, but they only can do that if they're aware that they have these options. And really the women who are struggling most with all these cuts, particularly around access either to the specialist services or to primary care, are women who are already most vulnerable. So we're particularly seeing the young women, their services were cut, and so now they don't even know that there's an option. In Bradford, where I work, we've got a significant cultural diversity and also social deprivation. And it is always the women who have the most hurdles to navigate who are the ones that actually we need to protect most or need to be able to support most, because they are the most vulnerable and they are the women who are really struggling to access contraception.
Your
now.
group, the advisory group on contraception, as I understand it, is partly funded by a drugs company. Is that correct?
It gets support for its secretariat, but those of us who attend meetings do that absolutely voluntarily in our own time.
Right. So you would say it would be unfair if someone accused you of pushing this because you're partly funded by a drugs company?
I would be very disappointed if anybody felt that, because I've spent and most of us have spent years working on this because we absolutely understand the importance of this for women.
So is this a message to local authorities then, in terms of where they allocate their public funds, or is this a message to government?
Well, I would say mostly a message to government, because local authorities and GPs are facing increasing strain, and the funding system is so complex and so fractured that it makes it really difficult, and there doesn't seem to be significant oversight from any particular body of government, and I think that that's a really important issue that needs to be addressed there.
Final thought from you, if I may. If a woman is not getting the choice that she thinks she should be offered, what should she do?
It's a case of shopping around. Women can use the FPA website to find out where there are clinics locally to them to get that kind of information. They can contact the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Health. They may get some information from them to just really find where services locally, because that's the message we're getting when women come to us, that sometimes they've had to wait, they've had to have 2 or 3 visits to be able to access one of the more effective methods that they actually want to use when they do know about them.
Okay, thank you all very much. Sorry, go on quickly, Laura.
I was just going to say that FPA also has a tool called My Contraception Tool, which takes into account your physical needs and your personal preferences, and that will help you decide. So you can print out the results of the survey on there and take it to your GP for your consultation.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks for coming on the programme. Thank you.